Good evening. The landmark High Court ruling in Nairobi claiming President Kenyatta's creation of the position of Chief Administrative Secretaries in all government ministries was unconstitutional. Further, High Court Judge Anthony Mirima on Tuesday also said cabinet secretaries who were appointed in the first term must be approved by the National Assembly to serve in the second term. We break down and discuss the legality of the sitting cabinet secretaries who have been in office for over 4 years now. Good evening and welcome on this 22nd day of April, at a time the political warfare is slowly getting heated up. Jubilee Party has written to the Registrar of Political Parties and Derito seeking to dissolve its coalition agreement with PDR, now UDA. And is it too soon or too late? Should we say we had seen this coming? The decision coming just days after Deputy President William Ruto hinted at using UDA as his party ticket ahead of the 2022 general elections. We ask you on our question of the day. What's your take on the performance of the Jubilee government? What's your take on the performance of the Jubilee government? We'll also discuss a controversy that has rocked the BBI push for a referendum after it emerged that there exist varying BBI bills. Speak to us and share your feedback through our SMS line 111 on our WhatsApp number 0785 939529 0785 939529 or on our social media handles as Switch TV Kenya or at Lincoln Wumbogo. Remember to use the hashtag tipping point so we could keep this conversation as interactive as possible. My name is Lincoln Wumbogo. Our sign language interpreters tonight are Michael Mathia and Teresia Washira. And straight to the discussion with me is lawyer Nurdin Kagai and Karaoke Ngunjiri, a political analyst. And virtually we have Martin Owino, Member of Parliament of Nthiwa constituency. And on to our question of the day. Do you think the Jubilee government has performed well? What's your take on the performance of the Jubilee government? Send in your feedback through our SMS line 111 or WhatsApp number 0785 39529, Twitter Switch TV Kenya and at Lincoln Wumbogo. Gentlemen, thank you for creating time. Now, Cabinet Court ruled 2 days ago that cabinet secretaries serving since 2017 and CASs as well without vetting are illegally in office together with this, all the CASs. Yeah. What's your take?
Well, I think from the onset you could hear some of the warnings that were being told to the president, and those in the legal profession were questioning whether these positions merit in what we would call our governance ecosystem. And moving forward, you see, the executive, as it has always been, is the superior organ of the other two organs, that is the legislature and the judiciary. And as expected, the president would nominate through a process of consulting the Public Service Commission, which essentially is the body that is mandated to appoint these public servants. However, because it was a political post that was meant to reward those politicians, most of them that lost in the last general election, then it enjoyed a high degree of legitimacy. So that's why perhaps nobody would go to court to question some of those positions at that time. And yet, even the president's ability to have wielding power over the opposition, which would have essentially be part of the proponents of going to court to oppose the nomination of these chief administrative secretaries. Another question is, who advises the president if some of these things could be blunders?
We'll come to that. Are they illegally in office 4 years down the line?
After the ruling, today's word of the day is kimeumana. In short, it has beaten each other. You see, let me tell you something. You see, the ruling is a landmark ruling. It's actually a really good ruling by Justice Mirima, because at the end of the day, you can't say just because you are a cabinet secretary in the first term, you shouldn't be vetted. You see, the president was vetted courtesy of a general election. That was his vetting. You see, that was his vetting. But now, these cabinet secretaries, they have to be vetted afresh because the first term ended. So whatever you did there, actually we should have vetted them as we look at what they did, their performance, you realize. So it's good that finally, because we have been asking questions, finally the ruling has come out. And then secondly, the office of the CAS is unconstitutional. It is nowhere. It was meant, as he says, it was meant to reward cronies or to give certain people who failed in general elections a soft landing. But now you see the ruling was good, but at the same time it gave the executive, or rather the president, a soft landing in saying that they touched on issues on COVID.
But my question is, doesn't the Public Service Commission give the president powers to create an office?
You see, in normal circumstances, the Public Service Commission would ordinarily vet those that will be appointed by the president before the president now will assent to the names.
Yes.
And I think because the president can reveal this, or whoever the spokesperson of the president can be able to tell us this, whether he consulted the Public Service Commission, and if, for example, the chairperson of the Public Service Commission and its people are aware of the appointments of these positions. So the president has powers to create such a position. However, through a direct consultation with the Public Service Commission. Another point that now comes out of this whole thing is how the judiciary has been weak in the country. Because I don't understand why a judge would make a ruling and then suspend the same ruling because of COVID-19. This speaks to the threat hawking that people have bought, and I particularly think that the judiciary is expressing a very high degree of weaknesses. Because how does that happen? If you are going to give a ruling and say the CSs and the CS are not in office legally, why do you then go ahead to suspend that? So it is normal in a natural power game and political ecosystem that a judge, even in the United States, would be fearing of dire consequences if they go against the appointing authority, who essentially is the president. So at the end of the day, all these things bounces back to the executive. So the executive has certain very strong powers, especially now that the opposition is dead.
Nurdin,
Yeah.
With the High Court's rule, you know, the judiciary and the executive have been at loggerheads for the longest time. And the epitome of this was, 2017, when the general elections, presidential elections, were nullified. In President Kenyatta's words, do you think the judiciary is revisiting?
Not really. You see, the problem between, the purported problem between the judiciary and the executive is an issue of control. You see, we are in a semi-state capture kind of a country, where the executive has captured the legislature because they are controlled by the executive. And so if the executive can be able to control the judiciary, it's a full state capture. And you see, the judiciary is still trying, it's trying to be independent. It's not easy in the political atmosphere that we have in Kenya. And so hence the back and forth, the threats that you see that are there, because it's all about control. And that is why we are saying, for those of us who are waiting for a Chief Justice, we want someone who is independent-minded, one who's not afraid to make unpopular decisions, so long as he or she follows the law. And I said he or she. Remember, we have to be gender sensitive. I don't want to be...
Is Justice Mrima one of, can you describe him as what you've just said?
Let me not go into that, because you might find yourself appearing before somebody and they have a premeditated notion about you. So let me just say that the judiciary needs to be bold enough. It needs to be strengthened.
Is this what described as bold enough?
You see, the ruling is bold, but at the same time, it gives the the executive a soft landing, which I don't understand why. Because if something is against the constitution, it is unconstitutional. There's no other word, there's no other way we can describe that. We can't paint it red if it's blue. You understand?
Why now? Why now?
You see,
why now, Ngunjiri?
Let me tell you, Trial Politica by Charles de Louis the Secondant, the French philosopher who talked about the Montesquieu doctrine of separation of powers, might have seen a very different circumstance then when he came up with that theory, that the legislature, the executive and the judiciary will be interdependent of each other. However, as times move and circumstances shift and political persuasions, as well as the natural causes that influence our politics, will change. So I don't think the judiciary in a natural setting of a governance system would be independent, like we are saying. In this case, I am surprised that my colleague would be talking of the independence of the judiciary on, for example, matters that relate to declaring positions within the executive legitimate and illegal. That is being overzealous in this process. And it's the same case that is happening right now, when I think the same judge gave orders to stop the vetting process of the Chief Justice. You see, of course, we understand that the judiciary in certain circumstances will exercise its ability to function without interference when dealing with matters that go below the executive. But when it touches matters of the sole organ that has been given the mandate by the millions of Kenyans to govern this country, then it is natural and a natural occurrence that power game will play. And so I'm not surprised that a judge will buy the, I talked about threat hawking. So the judge would buy fear, he will give a ruling, and then to be on the safe side, he'll go again and and then suspend the same ruling that they have given. So the vetting today continued as normal, nothing stopped. So I think some of this stuff people need to understand normally emanate from the goodwill of the executive on whether it wants to exercise higher control over other forces of the government, which now even brings the question of whether parliament can be independent. You see, the Speaker of the National Assembly in our Kenyan context comes from, or rather was elected by Jubilee members. So it is very easy for the president to make a call to the speaker and say, I want this bill, I want this blah 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 passed in this particular time. Put some technicalities. These are the normal power spheres and the what I would call the centrifugal forces of politics that normally happens with this, within this stuff. So when we talk to Kenyans and tell them that the judiciary will essentially be independent, then we can only tell them it will be independent when it is acting on cases that involve common mwananchi and perhaps the state now.
Nurdin, please respond to
first and foremost
his utterances.
I will not call it the judiciary. I will not say overzealous. I wouldn't use that term. What I would say is they're exercising something right now. Some of us in the profession were calling it overreach. By overreach, I mean, I'll give you an example. What we're having right now is a recruitment of a CJ. And there is nowhere they said that they have stopped the process. What they said is they have stopped the process scene of declaration who will be the CJ until those 3 petitions are heard. All right? That is why today the interview went on and tomorrow there will be another one. All right? So for me, where I sit personally, you can challenge. I don't see the reason as to why they would bring this right now, because at the end of the day, you can challenge the process even after it is done. Because where I sit personally, you see under the Constitution, a well-structured Supreme Court, the quorum is 5. All right? And right now we have 5, and we are trying to fill 2 positions, right? So, God forbid, if something was to happen to any of the judges in the Supreme Court, would have a crisis. All right? So I believe we should not exercise overreach. That I call it overreach because sometimes the courts might get too excited, and which might cause problems. So I believe we'd let the process continue till futility, and then you can always challenge the process in court. That's why we have the courts.
After a CJ has already been installed.
Yeah. When it doesn't have to be when he's installed, or when she's installed.
Yes.
You can challenge even when they pronounce or when the name is forwarded, because you know the name has to be forwarded for further report to be there, and then until he or she is sworn in. What I'm saying in essence is that those who are saying the judiciary can't be independent, that is the problem we're having in Kenya. You can't have, they're saying we can't have full independence, which is right, because there's something called interdependence. But now, when one arm of government wants to bulldoze the other, that is when a problem arises. Because you see, a weak judiciary, I'll tell you for free, a weak judiciary, the ones who suffer are the Kenyans. All right? Because right now, the legislature is captured, right? They keep raising the national debt. true or false? So for Kenyans, they have lost that arm of government. The only one they have now is the judiciary, right? So when the judiciary is compromised, for example, if your land is grabbed by a politician, do you have any confidence of going to court? The reason as to why we got to where we were in 2007 was because people had no faith in our courts. And how does that come about? When that arm of government is controlled, right? And what we're trying to say is that we know it can't be full. They'll never allow that to be. But the courts have to be left to make decisions according to the law. You see, because politicians will never follow the law. That's a sad reality. And orders in Kenya never observed. That's one. But they need to know that orders never die. Be it today, tomorrow, they will be executed. All right? So what we're trying to say in essence, the long and short is that the courts have to be respected. That's number one. Court orders have to be respected. That's number two. And then number three, he just talked about the Montesquieu theory of separation of powers. It's only in theory, but practicability in Kenya is hard. But we need to bring it here at the end of the day. It has to come here, whether people like it or not. Whether it sounds bitter, but at the end of the day, for Kenyans to have faith in the judicial system in Kenya, it has to be operational. And that is the truth of the matter. Because if it can't be operational, there's no need of having a court system. There is none. There's no point of you going to court. Link. What's the point? If you already have a notion that I will lose if I'm meeting a powerful person.
Gunjiri, do you have that notion?
You see, and this is the point that we must all get. When the judiciary is exercising its powers over matters that relate to the other arm of government, and in this case, you're not just talking about another arm of government, the legislature. You're talking about the executive, which essentially has the wielding powers even to appoint the judges, now represented by the president. These are the guys who went to the people and got the mandate to lead them for 5 years. They are the ones who will, for example, after the Judicial Service Commission has vetted these candidates, receive your names, and then the president will decide on who becomes the next Chief Justice. So when you want to stop a process that the executive, now led by the president, deems as very important at this time, then you expect that orders are not. Who controls state machinery? Nuldin. Who controls the police? I mean, you just remain in your courts, you give orders, write on papers, and at the end of the day, you go home. So who is in charge of this? We must be pragmatic.
Then why should we have a judiciary in the first place?
No. You see, I'm telling you, when you want to interfere with the processes that touch on the executive, not just in Kenya, anywhere around the world, then you expect that there's going to be friction. But when the judiciary is exercising on the normal practice of serving Kenyans justice in the normal cases, court of law, whatever, the executive will ordinarily not interfere. But when it is a matter that touches on the national governance of this country, then you expect the executive will fix some things, including the transferring of some of these judges. Should
this ruling worry President Kenyatta?
Link, you know, I'm worried because the word of the day the other week was bulldozing.
Yes.
And it seems like he's endorsing the bulldozing.
No.
Listen, it's like he's endorsing.
You see, what I want Kenyans to understand.
Let me just finish.
No. What I want Kenyans to understand is that power is different from whatever we read and see on these books. We must first understand.
Are you saying that power is supposed to be rogue?
No. You see, the normal existence of a state, and this is something that Max Weber talked about. The state has a monopoly of everything, including violence. Beteka, that's what we say in Kikuyu. It can be able to do anything that it wants, as long as it is, for example, to serve the interest of the state or acting upon the larger interest of the people that it governs.
Should this ruling worry President Kenyatta?
In this case, it is not that it is a bad thing that the state sometimes will pull the strings. It is the normal processes of power is distributed and exercised.
You see, people don't understand why people went to court. The 3 petitions, there are certain queries that have been asked. Number one, why is Professor from KU, why is she chairing the interview? We have an acting CJ who should do that? That's question number one. It's more or less interpretation of the constitution. But I'll come to where he's going. That is number one. Then number two, people are asking questions. You know, asking questions more like this process before it's finished. What is the outcome? You see, there's a notion out here. There's a CJ. Sadly, there's a CJ.
Who?
I'm not going to go into that. There's a notion out here, all right? And the sad reality is that, like I keep telling you, politics is in everything, all right? And I do not subscribe to the school of thought where people say, oh, the executive is almighty, all powerful, so bow down to it. You can never bow down to it, because the moment you bow down to it, it will never follow the law. At the end of the day, the power people are talking about, the executive power, is the people's power. They are only representatives of the people. So there is no single day an executive will be more powerful than the people it governs.
Yes,
all right?
I agree.
All right?
Yes.
So we have to move away from saying this thing is almighty, all powerful, bow down to it.
No,
because at the end of the day, let me tell you, at the end of the day,
just a minute.
The reason why we have separation of powers is all about checks and balances. When one arm of government is going beyond the mandate it has, that is when the other arm of government is supposed to check it. And that is why Parliament has failed. That is why I say we can never let the judiciary fail. Because it fails, Kenya is a banana state at the end of the day.
You see,
No, Gojiri,
yes.
I want you guys to answer my question, because none of you have answered that question.
What?
Should this ruling worry the president? Yes or no? Then we take a short commercial break. Should it worry the president?
According to me, yes, it should.
It should worry the president.
Yes.
No, then should it worry the president? It should.
Of course it does.
We take a short commercial break. We ask you our question of the day. What's your take on the performance of the Jubilee government? What's your take on the performance of the Jubilee government? Send in your feedback to our SMS line 111 at Switch TV Kenya and at Lincoln Obogo. We take a short commercial break. Stay tuned. The conversation continues shortly. Welcome back. You're watching Tipping Point right here on Switch TV. We ask you our question of the day tonight. What's your take on the performance of the Jubilee government? What's your take on the performance of the Jubilee government? Send in your feedback through our SMS line 111 WhatsApp us on 0785 939 529, 0785 939 529, Twitter at Switch TV Kenya and at Lincoln Wambogo. The High Court ruled just the other day that all cabinet secretaries and all CSs who have not been vetted, those positions are illegal. They are in office illegally. And I asked a question before we went for a short commercial break. Should President Kenyatta be worried? And both of you agreed he should be worried. Why?
Yes, of course, because such a process is poking holes into his legitimacy, because that is the most important thing that a president could enjoy during his term. You see, he might have all the arms, or rather all the police and whatever state machinery, but enjoying legitimacy where people accept not just Kenyans, but even international organizations, bodies, and players within the Kenyan political ecosystem do perceive you as a good president. That would bring incentives and so many things to your advantage. You see, like what I said before we went for the break, is that the president should be worried because this is not the state of affairs that we are supposed to be experiencing as a country, where orders of the judiciary are not respected, where you don't allow the judiciary, for example, to exercise its mandate without interference. This should not be the political setting that Kenyans should endeavor to have in a country like ours, which has grown in leaps and bounds. I mean, we are far ahead of countries like Tanzania, countries like Uganda and Rwanda, which have often been quoted as being repressive to free flow of information and democratic practice. So I feel the president, as one of the guys who was elected as a Democrat in 2013, and this guy who fashioned himself as a very passionate guy about the rule of law, I think should maintain that tradition until his term expires in 2022. This would include sometime even taking control of whatever is happening within the state, and sometimes also those that are below him and are not respecting some of these stuff that should be respected, then he should be the one to call them and tell them that, look, even if we have been given by nature the monopoly of everything, there are some times that we need to exercise restraint and allow the other arms of government and the rule of law to go on as it should. These are things that are dire lacking in countries like Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania. We shouldn't go that way. We should model our own way of doing stuff, where if the courts are not bringing injunctions to stop budget that should essentially go to Mwananchi, when the judiciary is not bringing issues to on injunctions of development issues or stuff that will complicate the governance of the country, I think that the judiciary should be allowed to exercise its mandate without interference. In this case, without forgetting and being naive to the fact that the executive enjoys a lot of influence and no other organ, now I'm taking you to what Max Weber would advise, no other organ or individual should have the same control such as the state.
Noted.
You know, he summarized the reality and how things should be, and I like that.
Yes.
The way things are, they shouldn't be that way. That is what he's saying. Now, for me, I believe, should he be worried? Yes. Because when you're being sworn in as a president, you swear to uphold and protect the Constitution. And this ruling shows that he does not uphold or protect or actually respect the Constitution. And that itself is a problem. Because when you're being sworn in, that's what you swore. You realize? And then at the end of the day, it shows that he doesn't observe the rule of law. So what kind of a president is that? That is more or less, for lack of a better word, a despot. You realize? And no one wants to be seen as a despot, because we know the characteristics and nature of a despot. Now, when you look at the three arms of government, off air I just told you, when you look at the three arms of government, I describe them as a three-legged stool with three legs.
A rung of a tripartite.
Yes. So when two legs of the stool are weak and one is strong, there is no stool, you will fall down. So in Kenya, if the other arms of government are not strong enough, we don't have a state. And that's why he said it's a banana state. That is a banana state. It's a one-man show, a monopoly, as he's saying. And in a monopoly, we have a monopoly like Kenya Power. How is your power? Exactly. Now, the other reason why he should be concerned is that the courts are trying to show that they are not kangaroo courts, that they can make decisions. All right? So, going forward, I believe we should be a country that upholds the law, that we value the law, because where there is no law, there is no order. And that's what I say. So we need, going forward, we need to breathe life. It's actually alive, the Constitution is alive, but we need to breathe more life into the Constitution so that leaders who have been elected follow the Constitution and follow the rule of law, so that we can be able, so that they can be able to serve the people, you know, and you serve them as you abide by the law, because where there is no law, as I said, there is no order.
The Attorney General, the Public Service Commission, the Attorney General is a legal advisor to the President. Have they failed at their job? Let
me tell you something funny. This reminds me.
4 years down the line.
Gidhu Muigai once said, sometimes you offer your advice and it's never taken. So you can imagine, after that statement from Gidhu Muigai, he said there are times he used to offer advice, but there are those who would advise the president otherwise. So what's your role there?
You're vouching for the Attorney General.
I'm saying maybe he's done his work, or maybe he hasn't. So let me play the devil's advocate here and say, in politics, there are those who are closer to the president, and then there are those who are appointees courtesy of the Constitution. So some people might have. It's just like Jubilee. There are those who are officials, then they are owners of the party. So you can realize there are those who are closer who he might listen to more. So it's a challenge. If you're the Attorney General and you offer advice, sound legal advice, if at all they do offer, and it's never followed, personally I'd resign, because there's no point of being an Attorney General to someone who doesn't listen to you.
You see, we also, and my friend is being oblivion to the fact that the Attorney General is a beneficiary of the same executive. Were it not for the existence of President Kenyatta's administration, Gidhu Muigai or Attorney General Kihara would not have gotten the position of the Attorney General. So this speaks to the question of whether you would try to question the legitimacy of a government that you serve in. So it is practically, and it's an impossibility. It's a practical impossibility. This is according to me. But like my colleague said, going forward, I think there has been a lot of poking holes into the conduct of the executive on the arrests that have been made, for example, on people that are associated to William Ruto, and those kind of things that we saw, for example, during the passing of the Division on Revenue Bill. You see, these are some of the stuff that will mudsling the Jubilee administration, perhaps having been done and without the sanctioning of the president, but by people who now control this stuff and sometimes go beyond what should be the normal exercise and day-to-day activities of the executive.
Isn't it a little too late to make such ruling, you know?
It's never too late to make a ruling or to make a decision in law.
But why wait for 4 years?
Thing is, Okiya Omtata was in court, you know, and these officers were, these positions were there since 2018. So I believe whether it's late or not, the constitution is still spoken at the end of the day. You realize, but like he said, you know, going forward, we need to develop a culture of observing the rule of law. That is the problem with Kenya. That is why you see orders are never going to be observed. You see, it's like the law is there, but just for the sake. It's like we make laws to put them as statute, as beautiful photos or documents in libraries, and which breeds a lawless country. And you know, a lawless country is a jungle. It's a survival for the fittest, and we can't have that, because those who are marginalized or weak, they will suffer. So I believe we need the law. Without the law, there is no country. I'll tell you for free. Because what you're doing right now, enjoying these rights that you're enjoying right now, what I am doing in speaking, that's freedom of expression. Without that, I can't be here. You realize that? So we need to uphold the law. Without that, people look at lawyers and they say, we fight too much. At times, without fighting for that, that second liberation that was fought for, this present constitution will never be there.
BBI, gentlemen, let's now, you know, shift gears to BBI.
Yes.
A rough road so far, and there are reports of conflicting documents being presented to county assemblies. How true do you think this could be?
You see, I think that Kenyans have wept so much on this BBI issue. You see, when COVID is happening and we are seeing the BBI issues being given the front priority in matters that should be addressed, I think Kenyans have cried. And you remember, even during the biblical times, sometimes when the people cried so much, God in heaven would hear them. And there is a verse in the Bible that says, when I think enemies or something of the people came in their strength and everything, then a prayer was made that, please, watawanye kwa njia saba. So perhaps this could be the cry of Kenyans being answered by God. And we are seeing the errors that are happening in that BBI report, which I think is not an accident. That is from where I sit. When you see something happening in politics, most likely it is that it was planned. And if this is the culture that we are going to see in this BBI process, what happens now is that the camps within the BBI, and now excluding IBC, because I don't believe that anybody in IBC would try to make such a blunder of exchanging these documents and taking the wrong ones.
But only 13 county assemblies got the right document.
Let me tell you, if somebody in IBC did that, then tomorrow, you remember how Chiloba was changed from IBC, then tomorrow you would see what would happen. But if you want to unwind a political phenomena, look at the beneficiary. So who benefits when, for example, the 70 constituencies are not added in the BBI report? So you can actually guess who could have, and looking at even the control of the whole process, look at why would someone bring the wrong document to the counties. It is either that from what we had, some corner saying that the BBI report or bill should not go to the people, it should be passed in parliament. So that is part of the team that was, there were rumors on President Kenyatta's side, that there are people who do not wish the BBI report should go to the people. So that could be a possibility, that maybe there are people who don't want the country going through a referendum. The possibility number 2 is sabotage because of these constituencies, and which has brought a lot of heated debate in Senate. You see, Senators Orengo are still not agreeing on the number of constituencies that should be added. So this pokes holes into what would happen in such a scenario. Scenario number 3, maybe it could be that somebody in IEBC colluded with either parties to take the wrong BBI bills to the county assemblies. And then the other question is, what happens after this? You see, already that is, the incentives of trust have already been broken. And if this thing is happening at this point, and yet we have not even had the budgeting now allocated by government, so what will happen next when we have the National Assembly and the Senate not agreeing? People in BBI, that is those that support the president and those that are against the president, now not agreeing on what should happen. This is a further delay, and if it is going to be noticed, that is my own prediction, that the county assemblies passed something that was wrong. It is either they go with the wrong document to the referendum, or they go back to square zero, which means a referendum will not be done when Kenya is going through COVID-19. I think if a referendum is to happen, and this is my own personal opinion, if there are people who feel that Kenyans should go to the ballot and choose how they want to govern themselves through the law, then that should happen in 2022 or sometimes after 2022 because of the budgeting processes and the cost. And then, you see, even Brexit, which was on the Britain people voting yes or no, or even in the referendum in Ukraine, that is during the annexation of Crimea. You see, people were largely divided on camps. And I don't think at this time, when they are telling us that the handshake was a very fantastic gesture that delivered an amiable approach to issues, should happen. The BBI, or rather the handshake, should have been something that will not at the end divide Kenyans, which means yes versus no. This is a time for consensus and a win-win approach.
Nordin,
I'm not surprised.
You're not surprised?
You know why?
But light credibility on the BBI process?
You know, I keep telling you this. I'm not surprised because clearly Super Tuesday was not super after all. You see, this thing has been rushed. You are told that the train left the station. There's nothing that's going to be changed.
Nothing can stop.
And then this pokes holes into the public participation that was carried out by county assemblies. So if you didn't realize you have a wrong document, so what public participation are you doing? What debate did you do in the county assembly for you to pass it and now take the certificate and the draft bill to, what do you call this, to parliament? You see, the sad reality is that, it's like I told you, there was no need for public participation because political parties in Kenya are owned by individuals, all right? And those who get elected to these political parties are more or less pawns. So they are always panel beaten to a certain way. So these members of county assembly, one, they were given an incentive, car grant, that's number one. Then number two, you see, the essence of having public participation, it is to create awareness and to collect views so that you make an informed decision. But when you already have a decision and then carry out public participation, it's like filling a vacancy, then advertise the vacancy. Or it's like showering, or it's like dressing, then you shower. You're not making sense. You're doing things haphazardly, upside down. So whatever is happening to the BBI right now, people can claim sabotage courtesy of IBC and use the... You remember back then there was that tweet, burning bridges. They say maybe IBC is doing that. But I believe, like he said, nothing in politics is spontaneous. It's always planned. So if at all there is there's conniving in between, that shows the nature of our politics: deceit, betrayal, conmanship.
Are we going to have a referendum, Nordin?
Let me tell you something about the BBI. The drafters of the BBI were cunning. This is why. For those who believe that it can pass in parliament and not a referendum, align to themselves, and they need to wake up and
why is that?
Seek legal opinion. You see, the drafters of BBI were quite cunning. Under Article 255, there are certain matters where, if you touch on any of them, there has to be a referendum. One, national values. Two, object structures of devolution. the tenure of the presidency, the functions of parliament. You see, so the drafters picked a couple of things which they knew would lead to a referendum. So anyone who thinks that the BBI will be passed in parliament, they lie to themselves. So as we wake up to this realization is that reggae, as they keep saying, there's a problem with the reggae. Because the producer and the artist are not in line. The producer has run away with the beat, and the artist cannot sing without a beat. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that the handshake as it is, you know, in Kenya, even any alliance, there's always that mistrust, all right? And this is going to brew more mistrust. And that is why you see Parliament as it, some think Parliament can actually amend the bill. They can't. The only thing they can do is they can only check on typos and whatnot. But as it is, the bill cannot be amended. Now the sad reality is what happened to the counties. The bill cannot be amended. Listen, what happened to the counties that debated the wrong bill? So they have to go to square one. And as he's saying, there is no time to carry out a referendum after, because you see, under the constitution, for there to be the elimination of the boundary, for those boundaries or constituencies to apply in a general election, that has to be done 12 months to general election.
What is the fate of the BBI?
You see, I tried to read the signals of one of the proponents, the president, and I was surprised because the day that we heard that he went for Raila in his bed from Karen and took him to State House, I was surprised. In that entire press statement, the president did not mention the word BBI, and they were with Raila here. The last time I think the president talked about the BBI was during a national, I think, celebration, or sometimes he was talking to certain stations. So ever since, we have not had either some of the people that we hear that are very close to the president
talking about
and
BBI,
those that control whatever the president is doing.
Then what's the fate
talking
of the
about the BBI? And so I'm surprised that we have guys like Dennis Waweru now every time, and you heard of rumors of the closing of the BBI secretariat. People like Junet Mohammed every time telling us that BBI must happen, it must happen every time.
What's
and
the
yet,
fate, Gojiri?
And yet, you see, and yet, I think the president already kept quiet about the BBI. He is not as passionate as he used to be.
Are you saying that because the president kept quiet, the BBI is going to die a natural death?
The rumors that came from the president's camp, you could hear that there are people who do not want the BBI to go through a referendum.
Gojiri, what's the fate of the BBI?
Adds up. So I think the BBI, from my own analysis, is dead, and I don't think that it is going to deliver the much awaited salvation to the Kenyan people. In any case, it is going to divide Kenyans more than ever before, because we are of course going to get into a campaign mood. And you look at
my director Dede says we have 3 questions. Do you agree with Gojiri that the BBI is going to die? To see the light of day come 2022?
I don't believe so. You see, the sad reality is that
you think it's going to pass.
The sad reality is that you see the modalities of it passing what matters. Sad reality is that BBI means different things for different people. That is why you see this push and pull, this back and forth. But for the political players, that is the president, the former premier, and the One Alliance guys, they all stand to benefit. That is why the president was in Sagani, he was saying, pitisha hii kitu, mambo ya successor, mambo ya nini, I have that, you know, niachie mimi. So the issue is, you know, BBI has a lot of issues. One, there was a time where the secretariat didn't have money. That was an issue. Number 2, who has to run it? You realize there was a there was a PS who wanted to run it. Politicians want to run it as well. So you see, the problem is that when you come together for different reasons without a common agenda, that is why the things that happen there. It's like you getting married to a lady who's married to you because of your money.
Now because you're talking about marriage, Nurdin, UDA and Jubilee, the divorce is Ruto being slowly kicked out of Jubilee.
You see, you had
in your last word.
Yes, you had the deputy president saying very clearly that just in case Jubilee is not available, the next best option is UDA. And today, the Secretary General of UDA, Madam Veronica Maina, has written to the political parties tribunal and said that, wait, let us act on our differences in the coalition and we can be able to solve them and then come back into an agreement that we feel will work for us.
Will UDA stand the test of time until 2022, Nurdin? Final words?
What do you mean test of time? You see, thing is, UDA is forming right now, and that is why they're having structures right now. You can see they're also trying to have this recruitment exercises.
Coordinators, yes,
the coordinators.
within the counties.
So whether Jubilee and UDA are going to have a say in the coalition agreement really doesn't matter, because UDA is seen to have, they're planning to have live post Jubilee. The sad, this is what I'm saying, the sad reality, what is happening to UDA is courtesy, what we just talked about here. Political parties are owned by individuals. You should realize. And that is why someone feels like this is my territory and you're encroaching and I control the territory. It's like a narco territory.
Let me tell you.
You know, a narco territory.
It's like a narco territory. You compare Jubilee to a narco territory?
I'll give you an example. It's like a narco territory.
Do you know we have commercials to pay? Political quote of the day. Politics is almost as exciting as war and quite as dangerous. In war, you can only be killed once, but in politics, many times. By Winston Churchill. The views described in the show are strictly individual views and do not portray those of Switch TV. Apologies. They were Member of Parliament Martin Owino could not join us. Technical difficulties. The conversation continues next Thursday. Many thanks for watching. I am Lincoln Ombogo. Our sign language interpreters tonight have been Michael Mathia and Teresia Washira. Good evening.